Seemed improbable at times, but here we are. The NFL playoffs getting underway, and the Bills very much in it as the number 2 seed in the AFC. Bills saying for a month now that mentally they're in playoff mode. Now it's for real, because now if you lose, your season is legitimately over. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast, everyone. I'm Kevin Carroll, and we're looking for a way that the Bills can actually get to the Super Bowl this year, John. And for the first time in a long time, I think it's legit.
And I'm Jon Scott. I'm just looking for a way now, as we do probably of the season, if you include the preseason, our 35th podcast, for you to learn how to talk into the microphone the entire time instead of to the side so no one can hear you.
I'll talk into the microphone like this.
I mean, how long have you been doing this?
22 years.
There you go. I think people at karaoke at Good Bar know how to talk into a microphone.
Well, I never did karaoke, John, so maybe that's my problem. Maybe I should do more karaoke, and then you'll get off my back.
I'm just trying to make the listening experience for our viewers and listeners to be maximized, and even though half the stuff that comes out of your mouth probably shouldn't be heard, at least that's kind of the purpose of this. So that thing that's right in front of you that's big and has the fuzzy thing on the end of it, you're supposed to talk into that.
You're not going to do this.
That is wrong.
And I won't cough. I don't feel like coughing today, John.
We do need a cough button in here, though. Matt. Jordan Bigfoot Man, please get us less Bigfoot YouTube videos. Please get us a cough button in here.
Yeah, those behind the scenes. Yeah, we did call you out, Jordan. You can't hear him, but he's not happy. John, let's talk about Bills football. Let's talk about playoffs. You said to me...
You're like Bono right now. You're holding it.
Don't make me sing a U2 song. Now we're getting into karaoke. John, you're the one who said, back coming off the bye week, that you only see the Bills getting into the postseason by winning the AFC East. I thought you were crazy. I didn't think they stood a chance at all to win the AFC East. You were right. I was wrong. Ultimately, they would have backed in even with a loss on the final week of the season. But we look at things and how the Bills have been playing over these 5 weeks of football that they've won. Now, A, they have to continue to do it now because now it's one and done, as I said. And B, some of the mistakes that they're able to overcome, you're not going to be able to overcome in the playoffs, like struggling against the Chargers and the Patriots. I mean, you look at the Steelers team on paper, you can't do as much as you want to bag on the Steelers all year. You're in the playoffs now. Anything can happen. And, John, we'll get to the weather because this is going to be a big overriding storyline leading up to this on how these two teams are going to be able to attack each other.
It is which side of the coin do you kind of look at it? For the just win, baby type of crowd, I think you go into the playoffs saying, all right, they're battle-tested. They've been able to win when they're playing really well, and they've been able to win regardless of the opponent when you could argue they shot themselves in the foot enough times where they should have lost. I think you could even say that in the Miami game with the multiple turnovers by Josh Allen. You could say that at other points of this 5-game winning streak entering the postseason. Or, on the other side of it, you could say this is not sustainable. Josh Allen cannot throw 2 interceptions and have a fumble and get to the red zone or close to the red zone against good teams or any playoff team, whether or not you think the Steelers are a good one or not, and not score points and come up empty-handed. You can't do that. You can't rely on a 96-yard punt return, the longest in the history of the Buffalo Bills. So which side of it do you choose to look at? I think it's fine to actually kind of be on both sides, toe the line. I think, yes, so many people look at how many total touchdowns Josh Allen has and say this is the MVP case for the total yards and all of that, and then the naysayers will automatically go to the turnovers. I think Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, anyone would be honest and say it's not just Allen, but anyone on the team. They can't lose the turnover battle. They can't be this loose with the mistakes, whether it be penalties or turning it over or poor execution.
Not catching footballs.
Right, but they've also learned how to not get buried when they have these mistakes, especially early, and how to stay in the moment and fight their way and claw their way out of the hole. I think that's also incredibly valuable here. They need to play a little cleaner, but you're not going to play flawless in the postseason. It's how you respond that I think is going to be good. I think, not that you won against Pittsburgh or anyone else, the Bills to get down 14-0, but I think the Cincinnati playoff game a year ago was such an unfamiliar place for the Buffalo Bills. They had no idea how to respond and how to dig their way out of it. I think that is one thing that makes this team maybe better prepared for a playoff run than maybe any of the others prior under the Sean McDermott, Josh Allen run here of 5 straight postseason appearances, to make you feel that they have the offensive firepower when it's clicking to overcome deficits. They have a defense to stop the bleeding and allow it not to get too far ahead. And then you just know if they actually are all playing in sync and the way they should beat anyone that they face.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, and we'll get specifically to the matchup with the Steelers coming up in the wild card round, but we'll start with the overall picture, John, and just to get it out of the way and get it out there right now, a lot of injuries piled up against the Miami Dolphins in the final week of the season, causing a lot of concerns on how this team is going to look health-wise going in. Bills had a walkthrough to start the week. We'll know more as the week goes on, but there's still a listing on how banged up this team is.
Everyone that did not practice on Wednesday as we record this, which again was a walkthrough, Sean McDermott categorizing as day-to-day. To me, that's encouraging. So Gabe Davis, he left the game, did not play at all in the second half against Miami with a knee injury. Didn't participate in the walkthrough, but he's day-to-day. That's encouraging. Does it mean he's going to play? No. Same thing goes with Rasul Douglas, a guy that got banged up, didn't play really the back end of that one with a knee injury as well. Another guy that left the game was Taylor Rapp right after the interception. Calf injury, which when you're watching him on the field, you didn't really know what was happening. It was kind of chaos because it was the game-ending play there. But calf injury, he also did not participate. Sean McDermott originally said Tyrell Dodson wasn't going to participate, but on the official report for Wednesday, he was listed as limited. Another guy got dinged up in that game. You saw Balin Spector have to come in because of a shoulder injury. Dodson limited, so that's good. Ty Johnson, concussion protocol, limited. Good to see that at the midway point of this week, he's already able to at least be on the field, meaning he's probably a step or so away from officially clearing the protocol here. And we've seen him as a good complement in the Leonard Fournette backup role behind James Cook, then Von Miller and Leonard Floyd with their veteran rest days. Another just note here, Josh Allen listed as a full participant, which is not surprising, but the right finger that was on the injury report last week is gone. Now it's just the neck injury on there. So it's not certainly as clean as it was the last home stretch here, where they were getting guys back and
this
people were
time
staying
last
healthy.
week, I think there were 2 people on it.
Right, Mitch Morse pops as questionable because he had an illness in the back end of the week. But this is also an interesting point in the season where we always talk about how the Bills are very cautious. They look more long-term approach when it comes to injuries. This may be an instance, I would imagine, that if Rasul Douglas is 80%, as much faith as they have in Dane Jackson, Rasul Douglas is getting out there. If Gabe Davis can gut it out at 80%, regardless of what I'm sure maybe some of you in your car or on your computer are saying right now about Gabe Davis, if he's 80%, he's going to gut it out. So these guys, this is where the Thursday, more traditional practice is a big one, and then looking Friday into the weekend to see, all right, can these banged-up guys at least get to the questionable designation to give themselves a shot to see how it plays out on Sunday?
Now, to get far into the playoffs, John, and the ultimate goal is to get out to Vegas for the Super Bowl, everything begins and ends, as always in the NFL, with the quarterback. And as we called the game against the Dolphins a microcosm of the season, you had both Josh Allens in that game, and now that you're in the postseason, John, in order to keep advancing, I could say maybe they could overcome a few mistakes against a team like the Steelers, but if you get through this wild card round, the margin for error becomes smaller and smaller with each week that goes by. And the hope is that what was put out there in the second half of the game down in Miami can start to trickle over. We heard Josh Allen the week before say the ball didn't feel right coming out of his hands. After the Dolphins game, he said it did. It felt great coming out of his hands. Well, we're in the playoffs now. The ball has to feel great coming out of your hands, or this team is in big trouble.
The thing with Josh is you don't ever want the coaching staff or the team to put him in a box and make him play in this I can't make mistakes mindset. He understands he shouldn't make certain throws, but also we always understand now in this stage of his career after watching it since 2018, there's a fine line between incredible and dangerous and wrong, right? And Allen toes it maybe more so than anyone in the league between he's gonna go for certain things and do certain things that you would never teach a youngster learning the game of football of you're getting tackled, I want you to pitch it to this guy.
I was going to bring that up too.
Or you got maybe a 1-by-1 window, 1 yard by 1 yard window to fit in a ball among 3 defenders, and he's going to rip it sometimes. There's certainly a balance that I almost feel like he's taken a little step back. He's regressed a little bit this season in terms of the taking what the defense gives you. But Allen seems to always rise to the occasion in the biggest moments, which certainly is playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
He's played incredibly well throughout his career in the postseason in general, the Bengals game really notwithstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, you see in the Miami game, it was, well, I got us in this mess. I'm going to get us out of it. You saw in the Philadelphia game, that was the one prior that I would say, oh, he put the cape on and he figured it out. He was sensational in that one. There haven't been a whole lot of those this season, even though the cumulative stats and numbers suggest it was maybe his best season or one of his best seasons. The eyesight tells you a little different. So I think the good thing is he's coming off an incredible performance or at least a bounce-back second half type of thing. And you just got to believe, based upon his history and who he is, that, hey, the Bills are going to ride or die with this guy, so just let him do what he does.
And I agree with that, John. And the different halves of the year as well, like even in the Patriots game loss at Gillette Stadium, Josh Allen brought the Bills back in that one, ultimately. The defense couldn't hold. Jacksonville, he brought the team back in that one. We've seen this a number of times. I think Philadelphia, they had to come back it was the defense. So Josh Allen can and will do that. And like you said, in the playoffs, he's played very well. So I think it just boils down to, with him, is a matter of smarts, making the right decision, knowing that he's going to do whatever he can to get the team in position to win the game by the end of the game. It's just right now at this point, I don't think you want to risk being put in that position. And when you march the ball down the field, you need to come away with points and just pile up points. And if something's not there, just eat the ball. Take the 3, live for another day. I get it. He's the gunslinger. He's going to try and do whatever he can to make the play downfield. But, I mean, now you have to be so methodical on how you look at this with take points, play good defense, take points, play good defense.
The brightest stars are the ones that usually drive the ship for championship teams. And if you look recently here, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelce, it's Chris Jones on the Chiefs defense. It was Matthew Stafford, it was Cooper Kupp, it was Aaron Donald, Von Miller when the Rams won a few years prior. If you're looking at it, it obviously starts with Josh Allen. But then if we're going to filter down on the offense, Stephon Diggs is the next one in line. And I think it was an encouraging sight to see him not only more involved, but productive. It was 6 of 7, 6 catches on 7 targets, the great play down the field. Had Jalen Ramsey not held on for dear life at the end of the game, maybe he has another big one. If Josh doesn't overshoot him on the deep ball, it would have been a monster game, a completely different one. you saw, or maybe those who saw the NFL Films clip of what Diggs told Allen before what ultimately was the game-winning drive of this is where good teams put a dagger in them, and collectively the team kind of did it. So you're seeing Diggs engaged. You're seeing that fiery personality and competitiveness infused throughout the offense. So that shows you, all right, the numbers haven't been there for an extremely long time, but he's still invested. So this whole narrative of Diggs problematic, all that crap, which it's crap to me, is non-existent. And so to me, it doesn't necessarily mean Diggs has to be a $125, a $150, 10 grabs on 15 targets. But he needs to be a focal point, and he needs to be a guy that is put in positions to make big plays in big moments. So if Allen's going to be on point, I think part of that scenario and equation needs to be being in tune and really dialed in with his top guy.
A lot of heat around Diggs not really being involved while they were winning these games. And, you heard the old adage that, all we're trying to do is just win, and a win is a win is a win. But then I think it starts to build up as you inch closer to the playoffs that, no, we're actually going to need Diggs to be more involved and be more a part of what we're doing. And I agree with you. I went back when you watch the Bills game live, when you're in the media and you're taking notes and you're doing stuff, sometimes you don't get that different kind of enjoyment of just sitting back and watching a football game and appreciating plays when they happen. And I rewatched the game on my day off after that game, and it was like you sat there and you're like, oh man, Diggs is doing a lot more in this game. They're getting the ball to him. Like you had mentioned, that catch early on to set up the first touchdown was like, that's it. That's what everyone's been clamoring for. Josh, just dump it in there near him. He's got the hands to make the catch.
And what was the thing that was most startling and troublesome for me heading into that game? It wasn't catches, it wasn't targets. It was simply snap counts. He was down into the 60s for weeks. You know what he was at in this game against the Dolphins? 88%.
Boom.
And yes, Gabe Davis went out. I don't know if that's directly correlated. I don't think so. But to me, oh, wait. Diggs is more involved. Diggs is more productive. The offense picked it up and looked more efficient and was moving the ball better in the second half because Stephon Diggs was even just simply on the field. I don't know if we'll ever know what in Sam Hill has been going on the 3 weeks prior between the Chargers game, the Patriots game. I don't know what was happening there, but it was weird. I couldn't put my finger on it outside of maybe they're looking to run the ball more, so he's not on the field. If that was the case, regardless of what the reasoning was, it was stupid, it was wrong. And moving forward, if Stephon Diggs is not on the field 85+% of the time, I think the Bills are putting themselves in a corner by their own doing.
Imagine if my stupid theory was correct, that they were just kind of resting him up for the postseason. I know when I said that, it's a dumb theory when you have to win games, but the game you really needed to have, he's out there. I don't know. We'll probably never know if maybe he was dealing with something or not, but it's just wild when you look at those numbers and you see what happened. And now we went from a couple of weeks ago saying, well, Josh Allen is number one. Maybe at this point, James Cook is number two. And then you have Dalton Kincaid and Stephon Diggs around there. Diggs clearly needed for this team to succeed. But the good part is, John, you do have other players that have stepped up towards the end of the season when Diggs' production wasn't really there, in Kincaid, in Khalil Shakir, at least as far as pass catchers go.
And I don't know if it's simply this idea of Kincaid was really involved and seemed to be taking off while Dawson Knox was on injured reserve. And then it maybe was a feeling out process for Joe Brady to figure out maybe not even just snap counts, but how to utilize both of them. And maybe it took him until the last 2 games of the season, which were 2 of his most productive. 4 for 87 in the New England game for Dalton Kincaid. That was a career high, season high in yardage. Backed it up with 84 yards on 7 receptions, which was the 3rd most receptions he's had in the game, and I believe second most receiving yards. So his 2 best receiving yard performances were the last 2 games of the season. You saw in that Miami game the way they were able to utilize him. It wasn't just the short stuff. Maybe they're also starting to stretch him out, for lack of a better term, and put him in positions that when he was drafted, many thought he would be the big-size slot who can be utilized down the field a little bit. That's what he was used also at Utah and was very good at in college. Maybe it's just we're not patient enough with a lot of things, right? Maybe it's just we want this, people want this, why aren't they doing this? This is what this guy's good at. It's not that simple. And I think maybe it was how does Joe Brady utilize both he and Dawson Knox? Because I don't think you could just simply say, well, stop playing Dawson Knox. 1, he's a better run blocker. 2, I know he has issues consistently catching the football.
He never has in the playoffs, though.
But he makes big plays.
Right.
He makes big plays for them. He's not just some throw it away, we're going to make him tight end 2 with 30% of the snaps. I don't think that's the way you utilize him. So I think it's good to see Kincaid can get his. Knox can still be involved. 2 for 22, 2 for 26 against the Chargers, 3 for 36. And then he's had 2 games with no targets at all since he's the 5 games he's returned. I think that is fine. And then you talk about Khalil Shakir. And without being too redundant, he doesn't often get a lot of opportunity, but if you're just looking catches to targets, it's almost 100% success rate. 6 for 6 for 105 in the Miami game, 4 for 4 for 39 in the New England game, 3 for 3 for 45 in the Chargers game. He's becoming more involved. Jets was 3 on 4 targets for 115, obviously he had an 81-yard touchdown in that one. Early part of the season, it was 1 target. He had no targets in the Jets game. 1 against Vegas, Washington, Miami, Jacksonville, and the Giants. So that's the first quarter plus of the season. The guy's seen 1 target a game. Then he gets in this stretch where it's 4, 6, 4. That's also when Knox gets hurt. So you're kind of, all right, we're getting away from the 12 personnel. We're bringing in the slot guy a little bit more. And then he hit a lull, which coincidentally was when Knox came back. In Knox's first game in Kansas City, Khalil Shakir just 1 target, 1 catch. Dallas, they ran it a lot, but he had no catches on 1 target. And then maybe they're starting those last few games to figure out we have the full complement of our offensive weapons. James Cook's running. How do we utilize him to run it, but use him in the passing game? Have these 2 tight ends, but Khalil Shakir deserves more things from the slot. We can't forget about Stephon Diggs. What about Gabe Davis? It's like all of these pieces, and I think it's just not as simple as saying 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the order of operation. I think one thing maybe we have seen, while it hasn't been super, super prolific, is the Bills and Joe Brady and maybe even Josh Allen as the trigger man understanding and feeling more comfortable with how to best use all of the pieces at their disposal.
Yeah, I agree with you on this, John, and here we are. It's January. It's playoff football. It's Western New York. It's the Bills. A lot of talk after the Cowboys game and James Cook performance on how this is how the Bills are going to need to play come the playoffs, come the bad weather. Bad weather for the first game, but moving forward, again, if the Bills win this one, they have another home game. To me, James Cook has cooled off at the wrong time. I wasn't impressed with him, and he had another big-time drop in the game against the Dolphins. And I don't feel like the last couple of weeks of the season we got much from the ground game and the running backs. with now Fournette maybe a little more in the mix, we'll see what happens with Ty Johnson. And it looks like your guy Murray is probably out of the mix at this point.
Yeah, I think Leonard Fournette will probably be the guy called up regularly. Unlimited call-ups on the practice squad. I would anticipate and be surprised if it was otherwise. Latavius Murray inactive, Leonard Fournette called up, and then it also plays a role into whether or not Ty Johnson can clear concussion protocol this week and get on the field against the Steelers. With James Cook, last 2 weeks, 16 for 48, 3 a carry, 13 for 36, 2.8 a carry. Chargers was 20 for 70 for 3.5. Prior to that, Dallas 7.2 a carry, Kansas City 5.8, Philly 2.7, Jets 4.3, Denver 9.1. So he seemed to be coming into his own, and it's almost like as the carries are increasing, the efficiency is decreasing, which to some extent is not surprising or shouldn't even be that startling, but it has not been – it's been down ever since the Dallas game, which, of course, you don't expect 179, but again, even if it's 15 carries, you want that efficiency, 4+ per. He's not getting there the last 3 weeks of the regular season, but they're going to need him. So it's not like, oh, they should turn more to Ty Johnson or Leonard Fournette or Latavius Murray. And then I also don't think it means, well, you just keep giving it to him 15, 20 times. I think, again, this is maybe more of a, we'll give Leonard Fournette 5 carries, we'll give Ty Johnson 5 carries, we give Cook 12 carries, and that's where they go. Because you don't want, regardless of the weather, unless it's the wind game, and frankly, that's my barometer for everything. The Bills threw the ball a lot in the wind game against New England a few years ago. And if you're going to throw the football in those conditions, I don't honestly comprehend maybe the Colts-type weather game from 17,
right?
Which Allen obviously wasn't even on the team at that point, so who knows? But outside of something that incredible, the Bills are going to be a pass-first team. I know Sean McDermott talks about physical football, complementary football. Many people believe, right or wrong, that in his heart of hearts, he wants to be a old-school throwback, ground-and-pound football team. But to me, no, I don't think that's just going to be, oh, it's going to be windy, oh, it might be snowy, oh, it's the playoffs, oh, it's the Steelers type thing, you got to ground and pound. I think James Cook's going to be an important piece, but he doesn't need to be the focal point of offense, and frankly, should not. If he is, and it's not grooving like it was in the Dallas game, I think that's, again, putting yourself in a corner unnecessarily.
A lot of ground and pound type of teams in the AFC playoff pool right now, John. So going through these playoffs, if you look at how the defense is set up and what Sean McDermott's done, dealing with injuries, this and that, solid pressure from the front four, and McDermott's defense is really good, and we saw it against the Dolphins, not really letting the big play downfield burn them. That's how the Steelers operate. Ground and pound on the ground and then go for the deep shot, and that's how they've been beating teams. But we'll get into that. You see a lot of that with the Ravens. I think you'll see that if you run into the Browns, the Texans, even Kansas City right now. They're not the chucking the ball all around the field that they were. So I think the defense, stay fairly healthy, is set up pretty well for what the opponents might be moving forward.
I've said this before, and I know we're laying out the path, the map for the Bills to make a, not just against the Steelers, but make a full postseason run. Is it crazy to say, lean on the defense, Josh Allen doesn't make mistakes, and that's almost their best recipe for success from what you've seen with this football team? I'm not saying, again, don't put Josh Allen in a box, but Josh Allen doesn't have to be heroic the way the defense is playing to make you think.
That's how they've been winning.
Right.
Really is, we always talked about getting to X amount of points in a game and then let the defense hang on. We're looking at a different team right now where you get 17 points, the defense is good enough to win the game for you.
Absolutely, and I agree. It starts with up front. I've been consistent about this all season long. I think of all the ebbs and flows that this team has had in totality, offense and defense, injuries and weathering storms, through it all, from very first night against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, all the way through the end in Miami. The defensive front has been the best part of the defense and, in my opinion, the best part of the entire Bills team this season. Leonard Floyd, an incredible acquisition.
Love it.
Ed Oliver, I think he's not going to get it, but I think he has a case to be an all-pro.
Mm-hmm.
I think Daquan Jones, we said it when he came back and when he got hurt, he was playing his best football. He's great in there, and that then slots other people like Tim Settle, Puna Forward, Linval Joseph. We'll see whenever Jordan Phillips maybe comes back. Doesn't look like this week. That slots all of those guys in their good spot. And then on the end, A.J. Epinesa, when he was healthy, maybe the best season of his career. Greg Rousseau is having a very good year. And maybe if you took a fine-tooth comb, you could find a few plays the past couple, or last week, I should say, where you even saw Von Miller maybe do a little bit. The bar is low. Listen. But
I was going to say, that's a real fine-tooth comb.
But even if you don't, I mean, Von's going to play, so we don't
Right.
need to have really the conversation of Von versus Kingsley Jonathan, because clearly they showed their cards against Miami that they're going to go back with Von Miller. But I think, maybe Von hasn't lived up to it, but everyone else has. They've maybe exceeded the expectations that you had for them individually and certainly as a unit. And to me, especially when you face good quarterbacks, which I'm not going to put Mason Rudolph in that category, but if you can disrupt with just your front four, it changes the game with everything else. And as we'll evolve this conversation into not allowing big plays with with Deontay Johnson or certainly George Pickens, or as we move through the playoffs of Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers or Amari Cooper or whomever it may be, Rashee Rice, to be able to utilize the other 7 guys or allow also McDermott to get more creative with bringing guys off the edge or at other levels. The front four sets it all up, and I think they've been sensational. And in a physical football game that'll likely be won or lost in the trenches this coming Sunday against Pittsburgh, I think that they're as critical as they are every week.
And so let's get into it right now with the matchup coming up in the wild card round. We'll get to the rest of the field in the AFC after we do this. And again, got to start with the weather, John. Just because it's going to be, from everything that I've heard, they're going to have to wait till we get closer to game day, but there is going to be lake effect snow coming off of Lake Erie. Whether it's right on top of that stadium or south of it is going to play a big role. What we do know is it'll be in the 20s, and it will be windy. That is for sure, as Western New York and all the Northeast has been dealing with all this wind. So that plays kind of a role in it, but in order for you and I to kind of go through the matchup with the Steelers, I don't think we can really let that kind of bog things down at this stage, because it's just, while we're recording this, it's just too early out. But we are aware there is going to be some sort of weather event. But let's start with the Bills going up against the Steelers' defense. And the Steelers' defense, no great shakes, kind of in the middle of the pack for everything this year, but also a defense that's going to be no cakewalk, although this Steelers defense, as we know right now, no T.J. Watt for them.
And that's the biggest thing of all. I mean, T.J. Watt is in the conversation once again for Defensive Player of the Year in the National Football League. I mean, he completely changes every single game that he plays by and large. Bills, a couple of years ago, Spencer Brown, maybe one of the best games of his NFL career, was against T.J. Watt, and they held him into check pretty well. But without him, yes, there's Alex Highsmith. Yes, there's Haywood. Like, they have other...
Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, is still up in the air, too.
He was a full participant, but...
Oh, he was?
Yeah, but... Good one.
Wrong again, Carroll.
But just in general, not having him out there, it completely changed the tune of the Steelers' defense. So, to me, it doesn't mean the Steelers' defense is bad. Mike Tomlin, just in general, the Steelers somehow, I called them frauds all season. I'm not going to back off of it. They had a negative point differential
Right.
Like, I don't even know if I can't remember exactly if that's happened before, but it's bad, right? I mean, you allowed more points than you scored. So to me, I'm not taking them lightly, but it's just such a different defense when you don't have one of, if not the best disruptive players in the National Football League on defense on the field.
Yeah. Nope. And the what we know with the temperatures that it's going to be in the 20s, John, and I just automatically go back to that game against the Patriots where it was freezing out in the first round of the playoffs, and it was, will the Bills be able to, run the ball because it's so cold out, and how are you going to – and they came out and threw the ball all over the yard in that one, and you touched on this earlier that you expect the same with Josh Allen. I think you referenced another Patriots game in the win, but I don't see the Bills doing anything else than what we saw against Miami, what we've been seeing the last few weeks, and I have down that maybe more of a balanced attack, but I shied away from it. I mean, you need to get the ball to playmakers in the air. Like I said, I don't trust James Cook right now. I don't, and this is too big of a time to have something slip through his hands.
Again, I don't want it to make it seem like all Pittsburgh has is T.J. Watt. He is massive, so him not being there is big. Alex Highsmith at 7 sacks, he's fine. Larry Ogunjobi, like they have some. Cameron Hayward is certainly a veteran who's been very, very productive in this league in the later stages of his career. In the back end, our old friend Levi Wallace, Joey Porter's in the lineup as well. You mentioned Minkah Fitzpatrick, who looks like he's on track to play. Like, again, the Bills are going to be the Bills. They are going to be the dictators until otherwise shown that they can't be. And I don't think the weather necessarily is going to play a factor in that. And if Josh Allen isn't affected and having to run a lot, then I think he can pick the defense apart. That's where the patience element is. Honestly, if you don't have a guy who can win every snap or so like a TJ Watt on the pass rush, then maybe you play more of a bottle him up and make him be patient type of approach if you're Pittsburgh, and see if Allen's willing to take that.
And that's scary. Because in a game like that, one might think he's not able to do it. Josh Allen, Bills quarterback. Steelers have gone through 3 quarterbacks, have now settled on Mason Rudolph coming into this game. He's 3-1 since he came in 4 weeks ago. No turnovers, but hasn't done much through the air. Again, Pittsburgh has kind of lived off of running the ball and then getting that strike down the field to Pickens. Which one am I talking about?
George Pickens.
George Pickens. 18.1 yard average per catch. Tops in the NFL, John. But like I said earlier, Sean McDermott defense is set up not to allow that.
So two big things that the Steelers have done on offense, change-wise, that have kind of changed the course of their season. Matt Canada, if you thought Ken Dorsey was under fire here, Matt Canada was, amazingly enough, survived as long as he did as Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator, fired on November 21st. So then they've played 7 games since then. Results, at first, not that different. 16 points, 10 points, 18 points, 13 points. But then the second change, which I think is probably bigger, is Mason Rudolph has played really the last 3 games. The 4th game, he threw the ball like 3 yards on 2 passes. So Mason Rudolph against Cincinnati, 63% completion, 290, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Seattle, 75% completion, 274, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And then in a sloppy rain, monsoon-type crappy weather performance against Baltimore, 90% completion, only 152, but a touchdown and no interceptions. So they found a quarterback who is the most proficient that they can trust, and it took them – I was never a Kenny Pickett guy. We kind of know what Mitchell Trubisky is, and they finally land on the guy who's been in their building for years and years and years, and it was Mason Rudolph. I think he's not someone, again, you have to be threatened by, as he's going to put his cape on and win you the game. But his rise into the starting role has also been something that has seemingly infused a new life, for lack of a better term, for George Pickens, who is a dynamic guy. We saw plenty of highlights and things like that. Cincinnati game, the first one that Rudolph really played, 4 for 195, 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. Boom. Big play, big play, big play. 7 for 131 on 9 targets against Seattle. He did not see any targets in that sloppy Baltimore game. But as you mentioned it, he's like, you talk about big play with Pickens. He has 22 receptions of 20 yards or more out of 63 catches on the season. So a third of the time, a little more than a third of the time that he catches it, it's a big, big play. 6 times he's gone over 40. I mean, the guy's a dynamic playmaker. It was always a matter of, can you get him the football? Then Deontay Johnson, he's inconsistent catching the ball, but he's a good wide receiver. He, too, has seen a bit of a boost in his production since Rudolph took over. He had a couple games early on. He missed early in the season, but middle portion, 79, 85, 90, then hit these lulls of kind of like what you would see Diggs and Davis. And then last 2 weeks, 76 yards, 89 yards. He's a good receiver if he actually holds on to the football. So they have decent skill guys out there. They just needed to find a point man, trigger man to get it to him, and Mason Rudolph has proven to be that in this small window here.
And that's one of the scary things about going into this game is if the Bills make mistakes, you have Mason Rudolph, who is basically making the right decision throughout the entire game, and it just takes one play, John, to kind of flip the script and kind of put this Bills team in trouble. With Mason Rudolph in there, yeah, he's not a threat. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Tua. But, man, if you just get the feeling that the Bills really need to get some separation early in this game and not allow this one to be tight.
Because what Pittsburgh wants to do offensively is grind it out, run the football, control the clock, and then take shots. That's what they want to do. They don't want Mason Rudolph to be the one slinging it 35, 40 times a game like maybe Josh Allen. You'd rather the scale be tipped more in Allen's favor than James Cook in the running game. What Pittsburgh wants to do is run the football. And Najee Harris was like a castaway, a forgotten guy of maybe flirting with this first-round bust type label.
He was
for
on
running
my
back.
fantasy team. I know how bad he was.
The last 2 weeks, 27 carries against Seattle for 122 and 2 touchdowns. 26 carries again. Horrible weather, rain, really sloppy game against Baltimore. 26, 112 and a touchdown. They were the 2 best games of his season with the 2 most amount of carries, and then you add in the compliment of Jaylen Warren, who we saw in the preseason pop a 60-plus yarder on the Bills. Yes, it was preseason, but it gave you that idea of the starters were on the field.
I was going to say the starters were out there when he did it.
And 13 for 75 in that Seattle game. So in the Seattle game, between Harris and Warren, they ran the ball 40 times for over 200 yards, or just about 200 yards. In the slot fest, only 9 for 33 for Warren, to go with the 26 of 112 with Harris. But that's the recipe for success. So the Bills have shown they can stop runs, but they also allow sometimes some big pops. We saw Achane do it, Breece Hall in the opener. You've seen moments like that. So the Bills, they need to be more consistent with their fundamentals to, all right, it can't just be, all right, stop, 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 pop, stop, 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 pop, because that's what will allow Pittsburgh to stay in their desired game plan of ground and pound, be physical. Sean McDermott calling them maybe the most physical team they're going to face. That was the emphasis of nearly everyone we spoke to on the team on Wednesday was physicality, intensity, physicality. We know that Steelers football dating back to the Steel Curtain in the 70s. So you know what you're going to get. That's what they want to do. The Bills are going to have to not allow them to get into that and match that and make them maybe become more one-dimensional. And that's where the complementary yin-yang thing is if the Bills are able to jump out early, I think it completely flips the script in their favor to where Baltimore's not a team, or excuse me, Pittsburgh's not a team that can play catch-up.
Yeah, I think that's key is to just get out to a lead and just go from there, John. Game day, bet MGM, John. Bills -10 going into this one. I've been wrong a lot this year on all this. We know the Bills genuinely play really tight games and never really pull away, but I don't think that's the case in this one. I'm good with the -10.
You're taking it.
Yep.
I'm not. I think I'll bake in a little weather.
Bacon. Nice.
Playoff football, and just this, again, this has been the brand of football the Bills have played for 5-6 weeks. Close, grinded out, not pretty, but they come out on top. I don't see a reason, even though it's Pittsburgh, considered the weakest team in the postseason, I'm not going to deviate from that being the way the Bills get it done here.
All right. Over under 35.5. Again, to me, this does kind of play into what the weather is going to be like. But like I said, the way the Bills have played this year, this might just be a defensive game anyways. And you get the Bills maybe winning one like 21-10, I'll say. So taking the under on that one. Mark it down. Take the under.
I like 21-10. I was thinking other things, and then that would have made me say I would have taken the points. So no, at 21-10, 21-13, I think that's the range I'm going.
All right. Bills get through the Steelers. We'll just agree on that, John. Here's the rest of the playoff field. Dolphins at the Chiefs on Saturday night, that stupid game that no one's going to be able to see on Peacock.
I have Peacock.
I guarantee you I'm getting Peacock by the time that game comes up. The winner of that game, if the Bills win, John, will be the one headed to Orchard Park the following week.
Incorrect.
No.
The lowest seed would then play the Baltimore Ravens. So if Miami beats Kansas City, then Miami would face the Baltimore Ravens. They reseed.
Why have I had it stuck in my head that the Dolphins were now the lowest seed?
They would be the lowest seed if they won, and then they would play Baltimore. That's how that works.
Wait, now I'm confusing myself. I thought it was a sure thing. Anyways, let me get back on track. I know how the playoffs work.
Well, then can you explain it so people are in their cars slamming their head against the steering wheel saying, God, this Carroll guy is such a moron?
Well, first of all, you should be watching it on YouTube and not driving. But at any rate, okay, so yes. If the Chiefs...
Can you just explain it I'll explain it generally. The lowest seed that advances to the next round from the wild card
goes to Baltimore.
Will face the Ravens.
Correct.
Faces the top seed. So, if the Kansas City Chiefs win and the Bills win, the Chiefs come to Orchard Park, which everybody seems to be in favor of after all the times that the Bills have traveled to Kansas City, especially in the postseason. If Miami wins, then they face Baltimore, and the Bills would then, if they won, get the winner of the Houston-Cleveland game. How do you think this shakes out?
I think it goes Bills win, Chiefs win, especially with the weather out in Kansas City. I think Cleveland wins on the road. Goes to Baltimore. I think Cleveland has a chance at beating Baltimore with their defense and how that's set up. And Joe Flacco going up against a team that told him to hit the bricks because we have Lamar Jackson now. I think that sets up well to then have, yes, I'm going to say it, a Browns at Bills AFC Championship game.
That would be saucy. That would be in...
I think it's realistic. I honestly do. When we talked about mapping this out...
And who would win?
Well, you're going to have to stay tuned.
No, we're going to play this out. That's what I said. So you'd have to then say Bills hosting the Browns in the AFC Championship game, who would win?
That Browns defense is killer, man. And Joe Flacco in the playoffs, I told you this last week. The Browns right now, to me, are one of the scariest teams. I know both fan bases are so superstitious that neither one of them can possibly picture this scenario playing out and one team winning.
It almost happened in 21, and frankly, or 2021, and probably it should have when Mahomes got hurt in the divisional round and the Browns were winning with Baker Mayfield, and the guy fumbled the ball jumping into the end zone, and then it was 3rd and a mile, and Chad Henne, ran for it.
That's right.
And had they not won that game, instead of the Bills going to Kansas City and getting thumped in the AFC Championship game, it would have been the Bills hosting the Browns.
That's
the COVID year.
So close. That's right.
I'm going to say Bills win this weekend. I'm going to say Kansas City wins. I think the Browns beat Houston, but as much of a great story as it is, I don't think the Browns will beat Baltimore. They barely beat them with Deshaun Watson after the best half of his Browns career, and then he got hurt and was lost for the season. Great story. I just feel like Baltimore would probably win, so then the Bills would go to Baltimore for the AFC Championship game because I would pick them to beat the Chiefs at home.
Yeah.
And then, it is so weird to say this, I honestly think the Bills are going to go to the Super Bowl. This is not a homer pick or anything by any stretch, because so much of my predictions this year, as I finally, more times than any season before, picked against the Bills, they often won when I picked against them. But I just feel like they, instead of looking at this inability to win the close, ugly, sloppy, we're not grooving our fastball the way we should, they found this way to win with C+, B-, and then just like the last 5 questions of the test, you're like, oh, these are worth 5 points instead of 1? And you just ace them, and that's how they win. It's just crazy that they just have this ability now. I'm not overly impressed with Baltimore, so I think they could maybe beat the Browns, but I'm not impressed with them, so I think the Bills are going to go to the Super Bowl. And without going through everything, I just think San Francisco is so good. So I think it would be
I agree
Bills
with
and
you.
Bills versus San Francisco in the Super Bowl.
I think a Dallas-Bills Super Bowl would be pretty cool, but with how Philadelphia fell off the map and how Dallas plays away from Dallas and how San Francisco just dominates teams at whenever they want to. We want to start dominating you. We can do it. I also want to say that, and I'm not big into going too far back into history, but recent history against the Ravens, Sean McDermott and company have come up with a really good game plan, including the playoff game where Taron Johnson had that pick 6, including last year when they were down in the rain and came back to beat the Ravens down in Baltimore. Even if you go 3 years back when the Ravens came to Buffalo and they beat them, but they barely beat them. That was the point where you looked at the Bills and you were like, as good as the Ravens were at that point, the Bills still hung around, and they weren't anything huge just yet. I think Josh Allen, this might be going back way, Josh Allen might have been in his 2nd or 3rd
His rookie year, his first game ever, was a rainy game that Nathan Peterman began
Correct.
in 2018, and the Ravens boat raced them. And then Allen got in the second half, and off we go here. Just what's so interesting about Baltimore is, once again, they're riddled by injuries at the running back position. And that Keaton Mitchell was like their new fast burner, dynamic guy. He goes down late in the season. But now, after being devoid of pass-catching weapons for so long, Zay Flowers is a guy we talked about on this podcast a ton during the drafts as a guy the Bills would be really lucky to get. Odell Beckham is good, I think, in the role that he's in. Rashad Bateman, I think, is good in the role that he's in. They lose Mark Andrews. This Isaiah Likely is a more dynamic, young version of the tight end, kind of the new age of what we're seeing at that position. Lamar Jackson going to win MVP, but I don't know. Do you trust this new version of the Ravens offense when it comes crunch time and this time of the year when it's not necessarily pristine for passing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good. If the Bills have to go there, I have plenty of confidence that they can put.
By the way, I don't know if I'd pick the Bills over the Niners. That would be, but we'll just pick the matchup, and if in a month we're out in Vegas rolling craps and doing interviews and talking Super Bowl, then we can get into it.
And Chris Berman on ESPN, his prediction of a Bills 49ers Super Bowl will finally come to fruition because he used to pick that every year during the late 80s and early 90s. John, 3 and out. I'm not happy with what I put down here. I was kind of whatever today, but Leslie Frazier reports are he's getting a interview with the Chargers for their head coaching opening. You think Frazier will get more attention after taking a year off? I was kind of surprised with not being a name out there that was one of the first names we're seeing pop up when it comes to San Diego or L.A.
I think it's because he's available. There's no restrictions on him. And, yes, teams are putting out requests and things like that for guys on staffs that are still playing and whatnot. But that's an easy one to get in the door. Not saying this is the only reason he's getting interviews or will get interviews, but you have to satisfy the Rooney Rule for a minority to interview. So he's free. He wants it. He is someone that I think is worthy of consideration. I just don't know at his age as a defensive background, and then unfortunately, maybe to his detriment, to see what the Bills' defense is now without him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't know. I love Leslie Frazier. I cannot emphasize that enough. He is an amazing person, an amazing man, and I know for a fact the amount of love and respect guys on the Bills who played under him have.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the way the game is shifting, I just don't know if he fits as a mid-60-year-old guy to come in for a team at this day and age, especially as you start to see the opportunities and situations that may be available.
Yeah, and I just look at the Chargers, and why would you go with a defensive-minded coach? It didn't work for them with the guy who they just canned.
No Dayton Flyers.
And you have Justin Herbert and all those weapons there. I would go offense.
Ben Johnson, or Eric Bieniemy. Those are the two that I think should go there. You need to, and the same thing goes with Tennessee, which I know we're transitioning to this now. If you have a young quarterback, you should pair him with an offensive-minded head coach. That's just my opinion. So that's where Ben Johnson, Brian Callahan with Cincinnati is another hot name, getting a lot of requests to be interviewed for head coaching positions. But Eric Bieniemy, Ben Johnson, Brian Callahan, those are the types of guys that if I have a Will Levis, I have a Justin Herbert, that I would be looking to hitch my wagons to. Bryce Young, another one in Carolina. I would want to get the offensive guy because you got to get the quarterback right to get everything else.
I got a text this afternoon while I wasn't around the internet that just said Carroll's been fired. And I'm like, what? I've been fired? But no, it's Pete Carroll out in Seattle. They move on from him, which to me is kind of a shocker. Mike Vrabel, I mean, I think he's done a lot with a little in Tennessee. But now Vrabel's linked to the Patriots. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop with what's going on with the Patriots and all this going on out there. John, I'm throwing this scenario at you. Harbaugh to the Chargers, head coach. Pete Carroll to Michigan. If it happens,
no, they would
look on your face. If it happens,
no, they would elevate the guy who Michigan would elevate the guy who was the interim while Harbaugh was suspended like 8 times this year because he's a cheater.
It was 6.
So that's what they would do at Michigan. Vrabel's intriguing because this seems like the stars are aligning. It was strange to me. So Vrabel was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame the week of the Bills-Patriots game. So he spoke at halftime. And the way he spoke about the Patriots and the organization and belief and all of this, I'm like, this is strange for a guy who's employed by another team in your conference that plays them to be talking this way. I think New England would love to have Mike Vrabel. I think if you're going to move on from Belichick, you get a Patriot guy who's been successful. I think he got a raw deal getting booted out of Tennessee. Then, to me, that's the perfect succession. But I just feel like it's going to have to be an ugly divorce because Belichick's not leaving.
Right.
He's not leaving. I put it out there for anyone who watched the show Succession on HBO.
I saw what you
Bill
put out.
Belichick is Logan Roy. That's who he is. This guy that is so defiant because of what he's accomplished, still believes he's better and smarter and the right person for the job to the very end. And unless everyone rallies to kick him off the throne, why would he leave? So Robert Kraft's going to either have to just say, sorry, you were great. You changed the history of this organization. That's a wrap, bro. It's over.
Big Patriots special coming out on Apple TV, if anyone out there wants to see it. I think it's coming out.
And just one quick thing, because I put it out there on Twitter, and then we'll get to this last one. I know we're going long. I put out how I'd be shocked if Bills linebackers coach Bobby Babich doesn't get looks at defensive coordinator. I think there are other people on the Bills staff that could get looks at other positions. I know a lot of people reference John Butler. I think, sure, that's possible. Eric Washington, people are hot and cold on him.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, Babich is young. I know for a fact in talking to him, he said last year he moved to linebackers coach in part at the guidance of Sean McDermott to say, hey, this would be good for you to round out your resume to make a case to be a defensive coordinator. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, all-pros at safety under Bobby Babich. Matt Milano, all-pro under Babich at linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds, maybe best season he had of his career. And now look at Terrell Bernard. I think his pedigree, his results have shown. But some people say, well, just promote him with the Bills. Why would McDermott do that? After 1 year successfully calling the defense, you think a guy is going to say, oh, no, I'm good. Let's just give the play-calling duties to Babich. Or if Sean kept the play-calling duties, gave Babich the title as DC, why would Babich necessarily want that if there's a chance for him to be the defensive play caller elsewhere? I don't feel like that's forwarding his career simply to add a title as defensive coordinator. I'm not saying he's gone. I just think he's going to be a hot name that people are potentially going to look for. And it would shock me if he at least does an interview for other positions. We saw Terrence Gray in the personnel department. Brian Gain, I think, could maybe be someone that also gets looks. Mm-hmm. We all understand this. We've learned it. The Bills' success means people are going to pick from the tree. Yep. And so I think this might be another instance. They lost Dable a couple years ago where I think it's unrealistic for the whole group to stay intact after this season.
Hey, that's what happens, John. You get a winning team, things start to break up because people want winning teams themselves.
Nick Saban is retiring.
Wow.
I know that's not a pro thing, but former Miami Dolphins coach.
Belichick to Alabama.
That would be hilarious.
I mean, they're buddies, right?
Well,
maybe that's the whole setup.
Maybe they'll both retire.
Or maybe they're both going to retire and go on a fishing trip together.
Wow, Nick Saban retiring.
That's crazy.
That also throws, I think, another wrench into coaching. Maybe not a youngster like whomever, but like you joked about Michigan with Pete Carroll. I don't know. Would Pete Carroll go to Alabama? Or would they probably look for someone that's younger that could be there like Saban was for 15, 20 years?
Right.
Wow.
That I wasn't expecting that. Okay, John, I'm disappointed in this. I had something else on my mind, but I just threw this on there. Since the snow is coming and the winter's building up and it's going to be cold out, we're talking about winter activities, John. I don't do much anymore, but recently I started skiing again once a year. It's amazing how the mind remembers how to do something. You know, they say it's like riding a bike. I can go skiing once a year and still have fun and not worry. As you get older, you worry about falling and breaking bones more. I guarantee you in my 30s, I didn't care, but you get into your 50s, and now it's like, maybe I won't go bombing down the hill with my nephew who's only 19 years old. Maybe I'll stay with my niece who's 12 and slowly work our way down the slope. But all the other winter activities I can't stand. I don't like being cold. I just don't care to be out in it. I play hockey, but I play year-round, so I don't really consider that in the rotation. But there's nothing else enjoyable to me about the snow in winter.
I've skied once. It was fun. My
Yeah.
wife and I said, we should do this more often. Have not skied since. Maybe we'll get to it. I don't know. It's ironic. You're born and raised in New England. You live here in Buffalo. You hate the cold and not a fan of snow and the things that are accompanied with it. I was born and raised in Cleveland, lived in Ohio, now live in Buffalo. I hate the cold, and I don't like things associated with snow. I guess we really chose a great geographic career path here for what we like to do. You and I like to golf. We'll golf in all sorts of weather and push the limits to do that. I think we should, hey, is our Charlotte affiliate hiring? What about our Tampa affiliate or Orlando? I feel like that's what's better suited for us. I'm like you. I like skiing. It was enjoyable. My favorite winter activity is drinking beers inside and watching sports.
Yeah, I mean, that if anything, you're in one of the right cities for that.
I'm
Drinking beer and watching sports.
I'm switching from an IPA to porters and stouts. That's my shift come winter time.
Oh, maybe that was going to be my question about doing a dry January. We talked about New Year's resolutions, and now you see a lot of people dry January to kick off the year. Again, I fall under the category we said before. If you want to do it, just do it. But I don't get why you're waiting for the worst, coldest month of the year when you want to be inside eating a beverage to warm you up.
Now, listen, I understand part of it is the challenge.
This is going on wicked long. But
it's all right. It's interesting. I have no issue with people who do dry January. I think it's cool. It's fine. It certainly makes you healthier and all of that. Saves some money after probably being gluttonous and drinking a lot in the Thanksgiving through the holiday season. I'm not doing it. I maybe am limiting my drinking a little bit. I had to go to the bar last night because we had no power at my house, so that was the only one. So the wife and I were like, hey, let's go to this establishment where we could take the dog, and we had a beer and whatever. I have a kegerator. I still have beer in the keg. So what am I supposed to do? Just let it sit there for an entire month? Can't do that.
Can't do that.
So whenever I think of like, oh, this would be a good time to maybe take a month off of drinking, not that like we're alcoholics or anything like that. Not that you have to be that severe to take time off either.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But I'm like, well, there's football games and the Bills are still playing, so I want to have a beer. The Super Bowl's in February. The Valentine's Day, which you don't really celebrate, but so Otto's birthday is in February. Then I get to March, and I'm like, it's the NCAA tournament and St. Patrick's Day. Then I get to April, and I'm like, do I really want to do this in April? And then the next thing I know, we're off and running.
Well, then you get to April, and you're like, oh, it's warm. It's starting to get warm out. I want to go outside and have a beer.
It's the first patio day of the spring. All right, I'm out.
I mean, come on, man.
And then the next thing I know, here we are.
Yeah, then it's summer, and it's summer. Then it's fall, and it's football is starting up. It's fall. Then it's winter, and it's winter. Tough, John. Very tough. Tough indeed.
So what we're saying is, if you want to have a beer with us at some point, drop something in the comments. We can figure something out.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Absolutely.
Stouts and porters in the winter.
Well, I haven't had a stout in a while. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. Bills taking on the Steelers at Highmark Stadium. Again, a 1 o'clock kickoff for the Super Wildcard weekend on a Sunday. Me, John, Fred Jackson will be back with you for the Buffalo End Zone postgame show with all the postgame sound you want. And then John and I will give our final thoughts on the Buffalo End Zone podcast after the game on Sunday evening. For Jon Scott, I'm Kevin Carroll. As always, thanks for joining us, everyone.